I was like, let's say like you make 10,000, but you got your splits, so you make, say it takes 6 months, but you make 6,000.
And
but you divide that, 6,000 over 6 months.
Okay.
So now that's 1,000 a month, but you're paying 500 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So you make 500. So if you need to make 2,000 a month, but you're only clearing 5, how many deals a month do you need to be closing?
Yeah.
Like, do the numbers.
This job would have been much easier if I had started when I was 18 living at home.
Right? Yeah. Okay, good morning. Let's see. All right. So Corinne's gonna let everybody in as you come on board. Let's give it like 2 more minutes. I know she's got people that are like pending.
Yeah, and what Billy usually gets up from 100.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's definitely, this one though is probably my favorite class to teach, just because having been escrow for 18 years, the closing piece of it is what I, specialize in, and then doing the transaction coordinating that manages the whole closing piece and the timelines and that.
That's the only part of the transaction that keeps me up at night is timelines.
Okay.
Now you've got people's earnest money, so now suddenly it's very real. Up till this point, showing houses, whatever, get the offer, okay. It's like, okay, now we got to get through.
Now there's money on the table.
Now there's money involved. People get weird once that happens.
They really do. Yeah. Yeah. They can be, it's fun to go shopping, looking at houses. And then, I've had those 10:30 at night phone calls, just panic, fire remorse, just freaking out like, oh my gosh.
What happens if I do this? Well, I got no good news for you. So.
But whatever you do, don't go buy the new car.
Yeah, exactly. I tell people straight up who write the contract, just so you know, I turn my phone off the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to call me at midnight, that's fine. We just know it's going to voicemail. And this is the time I return calls in the morning. So until then, you will not hear from me. I will be aware, probably at some point before I call it. Mm-hmm. Sometime in the morning I will listen to the message. But because it's time management again, it's like you got to tell people straight up, this is how I run my business.
Yep. Set
just like
expectations right up front. Yeah. So
it's not that I'm not going to be aware. It's just I'm not calling you until I've got things done and I know what I can tell you. There's no point in calling you to just say, yeah, I got your message.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, let's worry about this together. Yeah.
Yes, let's not sleep on this.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's, I think, like you said too, like having a solution or being able to outline the options. Okay, this is the scenario. Here's our options. How would you like to proceed? And I think that's so much of it.
Yeah.
So
I would.
Well, doesn't show me clock now. Oh, it's only just exactly clock now. So I like to give people like a couple minutes because
I understand.
Gosh, getting logged in sometimes.
Yeah, getting on Zoom can be a bit. Sometimes you think you're ready, you get on there and suddenly it wants to update or do whatever.
Yeah, I was on one the other day and I kept getting technical difficulties, getting like bumped out. I had to log back in like 3 times throughout the class. So then you miss stuff.
That's why I prefer to do it in person. It's just
me too.
Go up.
Yeah. Like Billy's trying to not with having I have a 4.5-year-old, so having the little guy online that I can do my own pace stuff.
Yeah.
In the evening, like after I get him to bed, that's huge for me to be able to do that. But other than that, I prefer in person. Like I was taking a class yesterday, nothing to save them. So I have to get coverage for him. Thankfully, he's gosh, she's gonna be a sophomore. She's 15. Okay, now it's starting to look good. There we go. So I always had a thing too where it wouldn't.
Hey, good morning.
How are you?
Oh, nice, good, busy,
Right? Living the dream. Gotta love you.
trying.
You try to make sure it doesn't become a thing.
That
That might be.
I'm treading as fast as I can. I feel that. And then it's like, hurry up, go fast. And then wait. I'm in that mode right now. And it's frankly, it's driving me crazy. I kind of lost it the other day on. So.
Oh, there's one to admit. There's one to admit, Corinne.
Yeah, I don't know if I can
She's doing it.
do it at all or.
Oh, yeah. There, it's she.
Okay, because I know
I
you said
think you
she
can.
would be letting in, but
Yeah, I think you can too.
okay.
And Billy, there you go. Okay.
So he'll be back, and then once he gets back, we'll jump into it. I don't know why, like, does it change? Yeah, it changes on that screen. So we do that.
Yeah, every once in a while you have to go out and count.
Truly, I went and worked physically on our job site the other day, did some demo and figured out.
Exactly,
That was great.
Helps, yeah.
Okay, now I missed.
Call contract. You got a wall you need knocked down right about now? Cause I just do it.
Yeah, and I
That's a picture to put on the wall.
I will be doing that this afternoon in the next 2 weeks. I'm taking out all the rest of the drywall. Moving.
The demo's the fun part. It's the rewarding part. And you can see so much traction so quick.
Oh, and I can see the nightmares that I'm dealing with right now. I'm like, structural engineer, I need a site visit because this second floor that somebody at some point took out the structural support. So now it's just cantilevered off of what should be just an interior non-load bearing wall. That's going to be my office up there. I kind of want to make sure I'm not falling down.
Yeah.
So you
Now
tell me what
rolling
you
on
want to
your
see.
desk. Go.
Are you guys gonna keep your place in Monroe?
Yeah, this is just a memory care facility.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah. Just
Hey, that's gonna be a full-time gig.
it is. It's gonna be quite the project. If I can ever get the green light, I'm just like my tires. I'm like
You're gaining
fully packed,
You're
ready.
gaining traction, though.
They're gonna give me the green light here one of these days and I'll be able to take off with it. So in the meantime. So we're gonna go ahead and jump in and get started. We're officially 4 minutes after. So it's funny on the teacher's guide, they literally have it timed per the minute
Oh, yeah.
to make sure you get through all the pages. So as I was mentioning, today's my favorite class. So it's the get to the close part. It's the get you paid
It's a
part.
bit cheap.
And how do we get there? That's the important thing. And so of course we've been plugging through all the steps. We're clear to here, so we're at 19, get to the close. After we get it closed, then we got to plan for the future and more business. Keep things rolling. So that'll be the last session. So that's the second to last, so almost completed all of Ignite. So today we're going to be talking about timelines, and we're going to be doing some activities on that. And I brought my real world example on how to build timelines. So we're not going to necessarily utilize the slides that are on here because we're going to apply it to Oregon's residential sale agreement forms, timelines, and that. Because this was built as a national. Right. So there's some terminology that's a little bit different that we don't use here in Oregon. So I'm gonna go off script a little bit so we customize it for what we're actually doing here in this state. So we're gonna work on actually building timelines today, some best practices and risk avoidance. And I'll give you some tips and tricks that can help you minimize things and help keep transactions from going off the rails. Referrals and reviews, because that's how we want to build our business, right? Best way to build it is organically with having, people refer friends, family. We can do all the advertising in the world, but Those reviews are golden. And then we're going to talk about like how to build systems for doing your post-closing follow-up. Again, staying in contact, reminding them so that, again, they're going to continue. It's not just about this one transaction. It's about building those relationships that are going to continue for a lifetime and hopefully continue to get referrals. And then we'll just go over our offers, and then you're supposed to do your daily success practice follow-up. So yeah, real estate transactions are not trouble-free. I have lots of nightmare stories, and I'll give you samples. Again, don't buy a car or a boat and drive both into the closing appointment. So it's strenuous. It's trying times. Oftentimes it can be darkest before the dawn. And I have literally told clients that because again, I've gotten the 10:30 at night phone calls. They're just panicked, freaking out. I got to get out of this deal. So we'll talk about, things to help minimize that as much as possible, because it's the biggest transaction of people's lives. It's very emotional for them. And I feel that our role is to be the professional and to help minimize the roller coaster. We're going to help keep them grounded and on course. So timelines, we just looked at that. Okay, so who here has read word for word, absolutely, page by page, line by line, at least your residential sale agreement? Every single word. I cannot tell you how many people have not. Like a lot. And so if you have read through it, it tells you exactly, if you read through your contract, it tells you your timelines. It tells you your contingencies. It tells you, oh, if I check this box, then I need this form. I can't tell you how many times we get contracts through that are missing all kinds of addenda that were not ever attached. And they're, oh, I didn't know. You checked the box on the form, so then it says, and attached OREF 097. So, yay, you guys get gold source. Yeah, I would say half maybe have actually read word for word. So, and then when you know your contract word for word, it's so easy then each year when they do the updates to the forms to, oh, they tweaked this, they changed this. You only have to learn this little change. So we end up getting lots and lots of phone calls or emails inquiring about things like, oh, what about this? What about that? Well, it's in your contract. Like it's already explained there. So that's what will help give us the information we need to create the timelines. So here's where it says, use the contract we've been using the previous days. You mentioned you guys haven't worked with one. Yeah. So I have a one-page cheat sheet that I use.
I'd like to get that.
This one,
for a reason.
We need to come up with something better. What this was, it was originally, we used to do what were called green sheets to put in for our DAs, the disbursement authorization commission demands. This was a form to fill out to get your green sheet DA created. But I've like handwritten all over it. I read through the contracts whenever I'm doing a TC instead of printing off and having the 12 pages. I read through it and I just transcribe. I want it all on one sheet. So right here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 contract. I can refer to this like bam and know who all my people are, contact information, property, who's got escrow, I put it on one sheet and I keep it so that I can just look at it like that. But then I will use this to build the timelines. There's a program that I use for timelines. I highly recommend, this is my handwritten cheat sheet as I'm reviewing the contracts on the screen. I put it on here, but then this is what I use to then put it all into my systems. So I highly recommend having some type of an online system that you're utilizing to track everything. Because if you have it on paper, but there's so much communication that has to happen with your client and with the other parties in the transaction, being able to communicate that information with them as well. So there's ways to do that within Command. And then there's a myriad of other programs out there available as well. So we're going to work on actually plotting out timelines. So if we're going to look at this, and we'll kind of refer to the slides, but then we'll skip over and, like I said, we'll use real world. So they're saying there should be a sample contract that you guys have been using that says, oh, contract acceptance date, so then inspection period, and then closing. So that's going to be transactionally opening to closing, and then what happens in between there. Especially when we're working with new agents that have never closed a deal, they're like, woohoo, I got them under contract. Now what do I do?
Oh my God,
You know.
what do I do with it?
Yeah. So this is where we're going to build that out. So let's see. All right. So yeah, co-op transaction. So who's the other agent on the other side of it? Because we're all have the same goal, right? To see the transaction close successfully. So rather than viewing that other co-op agent as an adversary, we're all working together for the same goal. So if we can always keep that in mind and look for that win-win that's going to work for everybody to get there, we might have different ideas on the approach. And that's what we get back and forth in negotiation, just like working together back and forth counter offers until we can come up with an initial agreement. But that's not always the final agreement. And that's something that is important to have that conversation with your clients that, okay, we have this, but and we have opportunities to renegotiate things throughout the course of the transaction. Inspections being a big one, appraisal. Those are your two biggest, what I say are the two biggest hurdles to get to closing, are your getting through your inspections, getting through your appraisal. And then there's a myriad of things in between that can happen. So let's see, we're supposed to brainstorm and write down who all, and I'm going to scooch over to the whiteboard here. I can't, camera's on here. I can't tell how. So while you guys are thinking about it, I'm going to start to outline. We're going to start building this timeline here. So here's going to be our contract timelines. So go ahead and think about who all is going to be involved in the transaction. And then we're going to start to map this out. Closing, AKA COE. I'm going to try to share acronyms. I think a lot of people aren't as knowledgeable. Like if they're newer to the industry, we throw out a lot of acronyms and it's like a foreign language. So if you COE, close of escrow. Oregon is an escrow state, and so we close using escrow versus closing attorney. Some states use closing attorneys. So, and we're gonna name up above here. We're gonna call this the buyer side of the transaction, and then we're gonna have the seller side of the transaction. So, on the buyer side, who might we have as part of the team?
You got buyer's agent.
Okay.
You got buyer's client.
We have the buyer themselves, BA for buyer's agent. Okay.
Well, you've got escrow and title.
Escrow and title, and then
Your lender.
okay, and I'm going to put them kind of in the middle because literally escrow is supposed to be the neutral third party that stands in the middle and says, okay, buyer, you give me the money, seller, you give me the deed, and I swap them for you. So we're going to put them in the middle. So we have escrow.
What about lender?
Lender. Okay. Yep. We're going to have the lender.
Home inspector.
Inspector. Okay.
Whether it's that umbrella, septic, well, home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. So inspectors.
Same thing with lender, that you have like your underwriter, all those guys all in there.
Mhm.
So then you also have your appraiser.
Appraiser.
If you have a lender, you have an appraiser.
Mostly. Yeah. Yep. And who does the appraiser work for?
Who's what?
Who does the appraiser work
He
for?
technically works for lender.
Correct. the appraiser is hired by the lender, buyer pays for it.
Yeah.
But the lender, well, that's another conversation, but the lender sends out the request for the appraisal. So technically nobody gets to pick the appraiser. The lender submits a request for an appraisal. It gets assigned out through the appraisal management company. It gets done. The appraiser gives a report to the appraisal management company who kicks it back to the lender. So there's kind of a buffer in there. But the lender is the one that puts in the request. And I think it's important to know when we're talking about timelines is to know who is doing what, whose piece of the puzzle. So that way we know can be communicating with the right person. I had one time in escrow, we were closing date was upon us. I didn't have loan documents. Escrow was the last in the line. Literally, well, when I first started, we used to get a FedEx package or UPS package in the morning with literally printed, here's your loan documents from the lender. They'd let us know the day before. We printed them. They're coming. We wait for the UPS truck. We schedule signings in the afternoon. These days, all this, like now they come in an email with a login and escrow has to print them off. So, I mean, we're just sitting there and then boom, here's an email randomly just shows up. Come to closing day, we had there was no loan docs, and the agent called and were screaming at me. And I cannot tell you, be nice to your escrow officers, especially the ones that call and they're using all of the profanity. Your file will sit at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And they were screaming at me, cussing me out. Like, why didn't you order the loan documents in time? Escrow has absolutely zero, not 1 ounce of control for the actual closing. They can't do anything about it until they get the loan documents and the money. So their hands are really tied. So be nice to your escrow officers. Don't pick closings at the end of the month and try not to do it on Friday. Yeah. That's my plug for be nice to your escrow officers. So we have appraisers, inspectors, the agent. Anyone else that you can think of? Maybe.
Only because I've seen it happen, but HOAs sometimes can be involved too, and they can get exciting.
HOA, yeah, or even manufactured home in a park, getting park approval. Yeah. So let's lump that together. HOA or MH, manufactured home park approval. So that might be a factor too. Yeah.
If they take forever to get the docs for review to your buyer, that can always be a fun situation.
Yep. Yeah. That's why we have entire separate addendum all about HOA. So if there's a scenario, there's an addendum for it. What about on the seller side of the transaction? Who would be involved for the seller side?
The listing agent and sellers.
Yeah. So listing agent.
You still have escrow there as well, but they're in the middle.
Yeah.
Well, if they have a loan with their lender too.
Yep. So payoff lender if they have a loan. So yeah. Do we want to close on the transaction if we haven't got a payoff from their lender and can clear that lien? No. Your buyers don't want to take over, like have their
some reason that attaching that second mortgage gets so much exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they probably want free and clear title, we're thinking. So yeah.
We had one loan a couple months ago in Amity. They had 4 liens against it.
Yeah.
Like 4 different things against it, and 2 of them we had to track down that had moved from state to state and have the same contact information, trying to go through cousins and family members to get to the aunts, the ex-husband, one that family.
That's why you're nice to your escrow.
Yes. Copy cards are awesome.
Yeah.
Because we live on caffeine. So yeah, I mean, it can be super challenging, and especially if the property has changed hands and not gone through escrow and had title insurance issued in the process. We were doing one farm transaction that had been in the family for umpteen generations, and that it was a big old farm, but then they just started like carving off like 5-acre chunks and giving it off to the grandkids and this and that. Not legally, they just were doing it. So then we're trying to do a transaction. Kids wanted to actually build a house, grandkids wanted to build a house, oh, there's no legal lot here. This is, and we had to go 5 generations back and start tracing heirs and suit for quiet title and that, like, so escrow's over here working with all of these parties on both sides, and it's like a big funnel, and all those pieces are trickling down to them to, you know, put together. That little signing package at the end is the result of all of that stuff coming in. And then, as I said, just the signing part, then after signing, escrow, and then the lender, there's 28 more steps that have to happen after the parties sign before a transaction is closed and complete, because I literally have counted. So 28 steps. So when you get done signing, and I was like, woohoo, it's done. It's not. And I have had transactions come apart between signing and the actual closing. So signing and closing, 2 different things. Signing, and especially in an escrow state, we're wanting to do that usually a day or 2 before the closing date, ideally, because then it gives a day or 2 for a lender and escrow to work through those 28 more steps that need to happen to actually get it to the point of closing, recording the deed, and transferring title, making it a done deal. And like I said, I've had that happen. And then again, if you pick a Friday for a close date, thinking, oh, we'll close, and then they got the weekend to move. But if there's a hiccup in those 28 steps, boom, you can't close. Now you just burned a weekend. You got to wait until Monday to pick up the pieces.
And
So
other stuff is in trouble.
and they're sitting, I literally had people come to the signing table in their new home.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, well, signing, get going, because we gotta get escrow. They don't tell you. They literally, we kick off our shoes a lot, and we're literally running barefoot, like back and forth through the office to make it happen. So, yeah, that's my plug for Love Your Escrow.
After everybody's signed, start calling.
Yeah.
Because there's no point before, no, you're gonna get a voicemail anyway.
Yeah, and then is it closed? Is it
Yeah.
closed? Is it closed? Well, and I have had at a couple occasions I've had to say, well, would you prefer me to be on the phone having this conversation with you, or would you like me to get it done?
Exactly.
Because I can't get it done if I'm on the phone with you. So it's like, I will call you, but in the meantime, the lender needs me to do all of these other steps, and they're holding up the loan money.
Yeah.
They won't release it until they have this, and there's deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
There's little, and we're West Coast, Federal Reserve is East Coast. 2 o'clock is the cutoff time for wires.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't, if it doesn't happen, it's gonna push it like another day.
When I was in Arizona, I used to tell my buyers, if you want this deal to close today or on the day of signing, we need to be first people in there every
Yep.
morning.
Yep. Because it's,
Tell them you want.
yeah, you need to be signing it, like, if it's gonna be a same day, you need to be 8:30 signing, and then you need to get out of the way, because they're literally going to be running the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Just for you, just to get that deal to happen. So, yeah, be nice to your people, be nice to your whole team, because, like I said, we're all trying to make it happen.
All it takes is one person to dig their heels in on that day, and just suddenly the whole
Yep.
world gets.
One little hiccup. Okay, so let's see. We're looking at the screen. I have the camera here so we can pay attention. So yeah, what's the first thing that your buyer needs? Once we're talking about, okay, now we're under contract. So, and I'm gonna use this. So mutual acceptance under contract on this one was 620. And then we said closing 719. Because I'm using my actual one. So if we are going through our contract, page 1, 2, 3, and we're going through there and we start extracting all of those dates and timelines. And so often in our contracts, they're tied to X number of days after mutual acceptance, right? So that's day number 1. What's the acceptance date? Question: Is the mutual acceptance is the start date, the day that everything is signed? Say, but it's late at night, you don't get signatures until 10 o'clock at night. So then you don't send back the acceptance. You don't send the acceptance back till the next morning. When is your acceptance? When is your day 1?
I'm confused, the business day that it, before 5 p.m. that it comes live.
It's when you have conveyed to the other party your party's acceptance. So say we've had hiccups before where people put like offer expires at, 10 p.m. on Monday. Well, you're meeting with the seller late, you get it signed at 9:30 on Monday. But by the time you get, you're late, it's tired, you don't email it back to the other agent, to the buyer's agent, until the next Tuesday morning. Technically, it's no good. They might have even signed it, but it didn't get kicked back to the other party to know that it was accepted. So it's when so that's why we want the email to the other party that confirms when we transmitted it. And we've had some people be able to be like, nope, I'm not. Nope, because they, for whatever reason, then they didn't want to be in contract on it. And so they were able to get out of the contract. And they're like, nope. So big rule of thumb: sign, send, submit in command, sign, send it to be reviewed. Just always immediately. iPhones have, I scan it right on site. If we're wet signing it, there's a feature in your notes. I just scan the documents right there, page by page by page. Boom, email it to myself, email it to whomever on the spot, from my phone. So with technology these days, we have a lot more options. DocuSign, if they're DocuSigning, you can set it up to have it transmit immediately, which is what I do. I have it set up so that, because you can set signing order, I have it set up so that signing order, boom, these people sign, and when it's done, it kicks to the other agents that show immediately. And then it's documented. So we gotta establish our acceptance on day one. Most often people are signing and getting it transmitted the same day. Everybody knows that we're under contract on the same day. But it's happening. So I might as well point these things out while we're talking about what can go wrong. So then your buyers are gonna need to deposit their earnest money, right? That's usually step number 2. So I'm always sending out like, congrats, we're under contract, here's copies of your documents. Oh, that's another thing to talk about. Acceptance. So we were just talking about it. I'm gonna put D is for documents. C, we're gonna use that as our code for communication. So there's, throughout our timelines, there's things that are going to require documents back and forth between parties, and some things are just going to be communications that don't necessarily need to have documents, right? So acceptance, part of that is going to be, transferring the documents between the parties. So then earnest money deposit, right? And we're going to use EM, that stands for earnest money. And that's going to be a document, obviously, check or wire transfer, whichever, and then the receipt from escrow. So I don't know if any brokerages are actually holding earnest money checks anymore. I think everybody, for the most part, has gone to where the check just goes immediately to escrow. So we're earnest money, and that's going to be up here on the buyer side. Buyer needs to deposit that. Default in the contract is within 3 days of mutual acceptance, and that's 3 business days. And that's, again, where you need to read your contract, because it'll tell you business days, or if it just says date, then that's calendar days. And business days are Monday through Friday, and we do not count holidays. It's national holiday. So then also your inspection period. Most often we're finding that people are having an inspection period, right? So we're going to put inspections. So this is going to require both communication and a document. So your inspection period, we're not going to, if they waive, then it doesn't apply, but we're going to presume that the contract, they want an inspection period and the right to negotiate any kind of repairs or changes to the contract based upon the inspection findings. That's pretty standard these days. Wasn't when I started, inspections were not a thing in the 90s. So it's yeah, like everything was just pretty much as is. It didn't happen. You either bought a house because you liked it or you didn't. That was it. So that's been interesting to see evolve. I think it's a great thing. We put so much emphasis on it that yes, on the sales contract, there are boxes to waive inspections if they want to waive getting and when we're talking about home inspections, we're talking about licensed home inspector that is licensed with the CCB. Your uncle that's a contractor does not count. That's, my dad's pretty handy. That's not a home inspection. They're not producing a report. There's not a CCB license number attached to it that's a home inspector's license. So when we talk about inspectors, we're talking about licensed inspectors, home inspector, well, septic.
What if you're the seller and the buyer wants to use their own dad to do the inspection? And
they can. However, if we're representing the buyer, if they're not using a licensed person, we have our own separate Keller Williams form called inspection waiver. And we are absolutely going to require that we get, because it's got disclosures on it and it's got the CYA that covers our HEMI, that they insisted they did. Oh, I don't want to spend, it's $400 to $600 to get a home inspection, from a licensed home inspector in that neighborhood. My dad's a contractor. We trust him. I don't want to waste the money. I don't feel like it. Okay, cool. Sign here that you have elected. We've advised you. We would recommend that you get one. However, you have elected to waive it. Cool. They can't come back later and we thank you. And it has happened where people have tried to sue our agents to replace the roof because they didn't want to get a home inspection. They didn't want to get a roofer up there. We felt fine with it. But then now all of a sudden it's leaking and they think that our agent should pay for it. It's actually happened a number of times. So cool. You don't want to, you want dad to do it. Awesome. We're recommending you use a licensed person, but you're elected to waive. Awesome. Sign here. Come on through.
so if you're on the seller side, have to sign the waiver. If you're on, or even if you're on the buyer's side,
You're on the buyer's side. You have to sign the
sign
waiver.
the waiver. If you're on the seller's side, it's less risk.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones choosing that. That's something they're dealing with their buyers.
Yeah.
You're going, cool.
Yeah. And then as the seller, I mean, if there's that, so that they can choose to not use a licensed person they want it, and they may still want to negotiate for repairs. Maybe dad's like, yeah, this roof looks like we should, get it replaced. And so, you do your buyer's repair. And so your inspection period encompasses not only getting the inspections, but negotiating for any changes to the contract based on that inspection timeframes. Yes.
So that's the question I have, because
Yes.
logic would dictate if it's not a licensed inspector and the buyer and their agent are asking me to do repairs, well, they don't have an inspection.
Mhm.
So really, it's not based on what the inspector said, it's based on their opinion.
Mhm.
So technically, can they even do like a bidder?
So, and this has come up
I mean,
actually in the last couple weeks. That's kind of why I was. Great question.
Oh,
Did you
thank
read
you.
the script that was coming up? This actually has come up in the last couple weeks. So, as with anything, any party can ask, right? We put it on addendum. Anybody can ask anything. And then the other party always has three options. They can accept, sure, okay, we'll replace the roof. They can reject, no, pound sand. Or you can make a counter proposal. I've had before where they even had a home inspection that said, because if you read the inspections, and there are boilerplated templates too, like our sales contract, it's always going to have the thing on the roof. Looks like roof is ending, its lifespan. Recommend, that's another one to pay attention to. And we'll cover that it should have been covered in talking about inspection. Recommend having roof evaluated by a licensed roofer. Right? So, as a buyer's agent, I'm gonna sidetrack a little bit. As a buyer's agent, when I'm reviewing the inspection report, I'm looking for those because it's gonna call out, recommend having a roofer look at it. It's gonna call out having a licensed electrician check the panel. It's gonna call whatever, those things are, those are most common. If there's any kind of stuff, have a foundation expert check it. It's gonna be calling out, like, deflecting a little bit, like, okay, I'm a general inspector, but this area needs a specialist to take a look at it. I'm going to be looking for that. I'm going to be talking about that with my client. And if they decline having these recommended, the inspector is recommended we have these further inspections, I'm going to absolutely have that conversation. And if they decline, no, I don't want to do that, I'm fine with it, it's okay, cool. Another inspection waiver. We've reviewed the report and we have decided not to get these additional inspections because your inspection time period that you look at it's open. The only thing that you have to specify is if it's what you call invasive, that is something that's going to cause damage to the property, like asbestos. We had one the other day that the client, it's also important to talk to your client about, have a little bit of that conversation. We're talking about expectations. First time home buyer thought that getting a general home inspector meant that they were automatically going to do the skewer scope, asbestos testing, lead-based paint testing, because it was prior to 78. It's like they thought that a home inspector was going to, we're going to test for mold and radon, and like that it was all automatic. I was like, no, like those are separate, and those may be separate inspectors that you have to hire additionally. That is where I do like that separate inspection addendum, because it does have more of a comprehensive list that helps me have that conversation with the buyers, saying like, okay, here's kind of a list of some of the most common types of inspections, like look through, see, mark what's important to you that you want to pay for, and then investigate that. So that client was like, oh, well, no, I want a sewer scope and I want asbestos. I'm like, okay, great. It's first time in all of my years, first time I've ever had somebody actually want an asbestos. And they're like, yeah, no, we want it. I'm like, cool. Talk to all the asbestos inspectors, and they're like, cool. And then I went back and was like, all right, here's what they're saying it'll cost you per, and they got a sample test, and you got to tell them exactly which pieces of whatever. It's not like it's like some radar gun.
Yeah.
I said, and if you read the contract, it says where you've elected for, what do they call invasive inspections that are going to cause damage. You are then also responsible to pay to have those damages fixed. So I recommend going with this inspector, who is also an abatement specialist that also has the construction piece that can repair the damage. So you'll need to get an estimate from them how much it's going to cost for them to also take the test sample and then repair that damage for the seller. They ultimately elected not to. They're like, well, so we know that it's asbestos tile on the outside, so we're just going to go with it. Okay, cool. And inspection waiver. So inspection period, digress a lot. 10 days is kind of the default on our standard contract. That's 10, I'm specify 10 biz days. So 10 business days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, skip your weekend, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But if you've got a holiday in there, or you get it accepted on a Wednesday, you could end up being close to 3 weeks on there. One thing we've seen is people write in a shorter time period for that, depending on when we had multiple offers. It was very competitive. Sometimes that was a way to be like, yeah, I still want to do inspections, but we'll do it in 6 days. And then you have to have a really good home inspector that you can get your inspections done, get your report back. Most inspectors are sending it back, if they do it in the morning, that evening, or the next day, but usually within 24 hours. So communications, you're going to be communicating. So your buyer, who hires the inspector?
What?
Who sets it up?
What?
Like,
Well, technically, the buyer, you just coordinate.
So you coordinate. Yes, that is the correct answer. We never say my inspector. We do not pick the inspectors because, and I point the things out that I've seen the lawsuits on, and this is why. Because inspector, something got missed. There was a minor, something happened. If you, as the agent, are the one that hired them or said, oh, here's my inspector, or I always use, for instance, I always use Bob Bird. So I get him under contract. I just call and schedule it, send Bob over there because he's a realtor. So he has his key card. He can just go in and then we just get the report. Yeah, well, something goes wonky. All of a sudden, you're on the hook for it. And you will lose that one. And it's happened.
Mia? Melinda
yes.
here. I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, when you sometimes in order to try to make our offer look better, we make a short inspection period, under 10 days, right? Let's say we do 7 or something. And then in the actual home inspection, some things are found that need that additional special guy to come out and check the roof, or a special guy to look at the plumbing. What do you do in that case? Because usually that ends up causing us to have to extend the inspection period.
Yes, that is the correct answer. You extend the inspection period to accommodate. You put that forward as the buyer's agent, and then here's the catch. Seller can say, yeah, sure, I'll extend, or no. We either come to terms on anything by this date, or it moves forward. So this inspection deadline, this is where we're focusing on this quite a bit, because this is where a lot of our hiccups happen. This is most often when a transaction will fail, from what I've seen. You know, is not coming to terms regarding something on inspections. So, woohoo, we got it under contract, but then we can't come to an agreement on repairs by the deadline. So the default is to protect your buyer's earnest money. You got to terminate your transaction by 5 p.m. on that deadline so they can get their earnest money back. If you don't, that means you're either proceeding forward as is, or you could still terminate, but your buyers aren't getting their earnest money back.
What about extension?
If you extend, then you're just kicking that date along.
Yeah.
So we did this
Seller
sample. If seller agrees. We had one the other day where this is where the communication part, and I'm going a lot deeper on this than the slides. The rest of it we'll get to, because I think this is so critical, because this is what's going to help. Understanding this is what's going to help keep your transactions together, and knowing this is what's going to help your clients navigate through this process and keep their emotion. Because I've seen specialists come down to, we're within $500 of, being on agreement for repair negotiations, but people are digging in and they're ready to can the whole deal for, $500 worth of repairs, So, that's just the nature of it. So, yes. Do you have another question? Okay. So we're going to be communicating a lot. When we do refers, we always refer 3, minimum of 3. You can refer more. You might have a whole list. I keep them. I have an iPhone. I have my contacts saved. I have all my inspectors saved. So where it says company, I put inspector and then dash, and then I'll put home, sewer scope, whatever they can do. And then that way, when I need an inspector, I can just go search my iPhone, go to my contacts, and I'm like, inspector, boom, here's my whole list, and I can forward them on. Here's people that might be good for you. Same thing with well companies, sewer companies. I have them saved, sewer, well, and then I have all the different people that I've seen over the years that, and there's even some that I have like essentially red flagged as my I would not use list, so that, I pay attention. I look for those. There's some that I know that have some notorious things that come up. time after time on their inspection reports, but also coincidentally, they happen to have a construction company, and I'll take care of those for you. Here's my
Yeah.
card, which is actually illegal, but there's yeah, don't use that person. So we're going to be communicating a lot in this phase right here to get to this inspection deadline. So we're going to be referring our buyer. Here's inspectors. These are the inspections you want. Here's, you know, list of inspectors that I've worked with successfully, or I've seen a lot of people use successfully. Why don't you call, conversate, because they have to make the payment arrangements anyway, right? So, you know, call it. I might even call, especially if we're doing the short time frame, I might reach out to those inspectors, be like, hey, I need a home inspection at such and such as soon as possible. You know, do you have any days and times that could work? So when I am sending those referrals, I can be like, hey, so-and-so can do, this guy can do home inspection, and he does the lead-based paint, and he does sewer scope, and he has availability Friday at 10. This guy, he does sewer scope and home inspection, but we'd have to get a separate lead-based paint inspector for that. This guy has availability Wednesday at 3. So then they can be like, okay, yeah, let's set this time. They call, they make arrangements, they, you know, make the payment, they give them their contacts, so, because there's contracts they have to sign. So I refer them, and then we can coordinate the inspection time frame. So we find out from the buyer, okay, I've decided to go with, you know, Inspector X, and he's got this time frame. Then we're letting the seller's agent know, okay, hey, you know, we've set up for inspections Friday at 10. So that way they can share that information, confirm with their seller. It's also important that for the inspections, inspectors will not touch and move stuff. So they will not touch and move personal property items. So if your seller has stuff blocking the electric panel and they can't get to it, they can't inspect it. So it's not gonna get inspected. We had one recently, it's actually in the stack here. Went out to do the inspection. They couldn't access the crawl space. They had it all blocked off, and there was stuff they could not physically get to the crawl space, so they couldn't inspect it. So we ended up having to extend the inspection period and be like, seller, you need to get your stuff out of here, out of the way. We've had it where water in the crawl space. There's a biohazard component to that. They're not going to go down there and access it, even if you sump pump and pump it out of there, because of the potential for biohazard contaminants. They're still not going down there. So kind of be aware of those things. Have that conversation. Set the expectation that, hey, we expect that all areas are going to be clear. We're going to have full access to the attic, full access to the crawl space, full access to the panel, and any systems for the home. That way, and I would have these communications in writing. That way, when we have that situation where, hey, we can't get to the crawl space, we can't inspect, and it's an older home, and there's some obvious issues, it's important. We were able to push and get an extension of the inspection period, because like, we need an extension to accommodate you getting your stuff out of here and having the inspector come back to finish up the report. He can't finish this report because your stuff's in the way. So communication is huge with that piece. And then once the inspector's done, they're going to send the report out. It's important that we review it. We need to read and see it, or share it with our client and say, okay, from this report, what is important to you? You know, here's the things that I see that they have noted as concern. I see they're recommending getting a roof inspector, you know, company guy out there, getting an electrician out to check the electric. You know, what do you want to do? Cool. We'll get, you know, again, here's 3 different electricians to have come check it out. Who do you want to get out there? So having those conversations, building that in. It's not uncommon in reviewing that report, and the buyer's like, yeah, and it's like, yeah, the roof needs done. It's very apparent. Like, get the roof inspected. Yeah, it's shot. We don't have 3 to 5 years left. It needs to be replaced. Cool. Let's get an estimate. And then having that Question. You're the buyer's agent. So you've put together your buyer repair addendum, what's important for your buyer. We have the inspection report. Do we send the inspection report to the seller, to the seller side of the transaction?
I'm gonna say.
No, not unless it's.
No, absolutely do not.
Which, my
It's-
personal opinion is, I think that's dirty.
And there's reasons why,
Yeah.
legal reasons why we do not carte blanche send the report. It even states that in the sales contract now, because people were doing that. They were just, buyer's agents were just like,
Here.
pitching them over an inspection report and be like, here, fix this. Like not even putting together. However, so we will not send it without written, get it in writing, a written request for the report, and then cool. But if we do get a written request, do we send it? What if your buyer's like, no, I don't want to give it to him?
I think it's probably up to the buyers, because they're the ones that paid for it.
No,
So you.
in your contract, it is in the contingency. Your buyer put, if they marked the customary 10-day, they're like, we want the 10 days and we will promptly turn over a copy of that report to the seller if they ask for it.
Yeah, yeah.
That is part of their, it's the give and take. So it is in writing, in the contract, in that contingency. So it's not even a question. Like they cannot withhold it.
So
That was part of their
they just have to say
contingency.
we want the report, they can have it, because.
Yep. Once in a while, I've had a seller's agent be like, I would just like a snippet of the part where it's referring to the roof. They can request for a portion of it. They don't have to request for all of it. But we don't screenshot even pieces and send it. We don't send, they need to request it in writing, but if they do, we send it.
Here's why I think it's dirty and partially unethical. Is me and selling a house. Billy's the buyer's agent. And I say, hey, they found multiple items on this home inspection. Do you mind if I tell you, do you mind if I send you the report? You're like, nope, I don't want it. And the
Because
deal falls through, the repairs aren't made. A week later, Mia has a buyer. And do you have any inspection reports that have been done previously on that deal that fell through when the house was under contract? Nope, we don't have it.
correct.
I feel it's hiding it and not being forthcoming, even if it means, hey, they found a serious problem with our septic system that's going to cost whoever buys it $30,000. But I feel it's being snaky because they're not being forthcoming. Selling a property and then saying, I'm only going to answer your direct questions because I know the hidden stuff that's about to come that you're trying to find. What part of that is fiduciary duty
Mhm.
to your seller and your buyer, or just doing the right thing?
Mm-hmm. And there is that fine line. So and I absolutely hear what you're saying. There's also, when we're representing the seller, it's our fiduciary duty to protect them. If they are in receipt of it, then they have to disclose it,
Exactly.
include it.
And if they don't,
And-
are you being honest with how you're representing that property?
And every home inspector is going to have an absolutely different report and
Yeah.
identify things. And that's why, so even in those scenarios, and we've had that where the seller didn't get the report and then a subsequent buyer, and it's like, well, here's the report. So the guy's like, well, do I need to get a home inspection? We're having them. So they are not the buyer that is in receipt of that second hand report.
Yeah.
There's no fiduciary duty between that buyer and that inspector. There's no recourse. So then as the buyer's agent, then we are also we fall back to that whole liability thing. If they are like, I don't need to get an inspection report, there's this other one that we could just go with and save the money. So again, we are absolutely having that conversation. They are waiving inspection. And we're gonna have them sign that form, and they're gonna know and understand that. Because again, inspectors for human tube stuff gets missed. And like I said, build those relationships with your inspector, because one inspector, you know, they're going to have their thing that they're particularly focused on, or others, and some are going to have more familiarity with things. I mean, who here has gone through a home inspector licensing class? Do you know what it takes? Next to nothing, and you do not have to have any construction knowledge whatsoever. Believe me, I've seen those reports, and I've worked with some of those people, and it scares the bejeebers out of me, especially being in construction, having grown up building houses. You just go do a course, and then boom, I got my little certificate, and I'm a home inspector now.
Yeah.
And the amount of liability on those inspectors, do you know how much it is? Cost of what you paid for the report. Oh, sorry, here's your refund of your $400. Done. So that's where, yeah, they're kind of great. They're informational, but you know, do you want to put your buyer in that liability position? And as is representing the seller, maybe they hired the craptastic inspector who doesn't know what because I have successfully fought back for my seller's agent. I've had him be like, oh, let's work needs replaced, and that's it. We get the buyer repair addendum, and I send 2 roofers out there, and they both come back and be like, no, it's good, or no, that's nothing. I've seen completely false information on reports because they're not contractors and they don't even know.
Mhm.
So I really like inspection. I think it's fantastic. It's way better than it used to be because so many people are.
How do you feel about
I had buyers that were like, they were like, oh, you know, the turning thing, you know, those turning things. I'm like, a screwdriver? Like, yeah, we don't have one of those. I said, I hope you have a big fat checkbook. You're buying a house, because who's responsible for that? You can't call the landlord to come. I changed the aerators on their faucet, and I double strapped their hot water heater. And I'm like, there's your closing gift, and here's a screwdriver. And they were ecstatic. 50-cent washers. But they couldn't do it. They were going to pay $500 for a contractor to come out and put 2 screws into the post at the end of the steps and a doggy gate so they could open the door and let the doggy go out on the deck. And they were going to pay $500 for a contractor to do that.
So what do you think about pre-home inspections to stay ahead of finding the problems, getting ahead of it, having repairs done so that when they go to post a house on the market, here's an inspection we did 2 months ago, this is what we did. Does it help mitigate that, put their buyer's mind at ease if the seller's willing to spend that $400 or $500 to just say, hey, it's insurance to make sure we have a smooth transaction?
I've seen where it's there, it's posted on the MLS, it's part of the documents up front, and the buyers are still having their own inspections. Because their agents recommended that they do, because again, they know that there's no recourse, and hey, we want you meeting with your inspector. It's a CYA, so cover your hiney. So I know we super went way off script on all of that. But it kind of ties, you know, what are we doing to bulletproof our transactions? Got on here. Oh, so inspections, we talked about that a lot. And again, that's our 10 days. That's our get inspections and get them negotiated. Extend if everybody's agreeable to that. We need to. If not, I mean, we've had before where the inspection report came back so bad, it was just like, it's, you know, I try to encourage folks to at least try to negotiate for something. Like, we like this house, if X, Y, and Z were done and fixed. The other conversation I think to have is, hey, okay, we know X, Y, and Z are showing up in the report that should be done. Do we want to ask the seller to make sure that's done, taken care of, or would we prefer to maybe have a credit towards our closing costs to cover that dollar amount, so that we as the buyer agent, you know, let the buyer agent, but the buyer can be in charge of getting those things done to our standard and specifications and get to pick who we want to do the work? Or do we want to leave that up to the seller? Because I've got nightmare stories on that, including a pipe in my brand new. Yes.
I was going to say, I almost always recommend that the buyer, unless it's something that's going to be required by the appraisal, that the buyer
Correct.
actually get the work done, pick the contractor they want and ask for a credit instead, because sometimes it messes up their loan timeline and they might lose their lock because contractors are so backed up sometimes and can't get to your repair in a timely fashion. And anyway, it seems to
Yep.
save hassle if you can do it that way.
Yes, yeah. Unless it's gonna be something that's like a lender required, because the house has to be in financeable condition. So if it's a roof, you know, the lender's gonna want to see that done. If it's roof, foundation, heating, plumbing, if there's, which we don't share the inspection with the lender. That's for our buyer. They're getting the appraisal, but if something pops on the appraisal, that becomes a lender required item.
Yeah.
That, you know, then yes. If we see it on the inspection report, then I'm like, this is gonna be an issue on the appraisal. We know it's gonna be an issue. We might as well work on negotiating for that now to get it done and taken care of.
Oh.
But I agree. I think seller wants to sell the house and move on. They don't want to fix it all up. And if they do have to fix something, do you think they're going to do it to the highest, best standards possible? Or are they going to do it for the cheapest, quickest, get out of there? I had lender required repairs on my house that I live in now, the house that I bought. It was a 1940, I can't remember if it's a 41 or a 47. The kitchen sink pipe came out of the wall and poured on the ground. And in the 40s, that was the standard. So that was typical for that. But it was a VA loan. VA appraiser didn't like that and required, put on the report that the pipe had to be connected to the waste system. And there was some dry rot siding, T111, on the outside right there. Go figure. Pouring water, and the weather side too. I begged the seller, like, let me just get this taken care of. Let me have, you know, again, my husband and I are in construction. I could have just, no. They insisted that they take care of it. One would think, while you have that rotted siding off, and then prior to putting the new 2 pieces of siding on, the walls opened up, the studs are exposed. You could very easily hole saw, run the pipe, and connect it. No. He just swapped out the siding and then took a hole saw and went through. The kitchen had just been remodeled, hole sawed through the new cabinets, and there's a pipe running through the middle of my new cabinets. And then I have to try to put pots and pans around this pipe that also now serves as a conduit for rodents. So that's my super huge horror story of don't let the city do the repairs if at all possible. My 2 cents for whatever they're worth. Okay, so we're flipping back to the slides here. So interaction, communicating those deadlines, communicating the contract. Like I said, we can set them up. I do like to, do like a bullet point, like email with attachments of documents, but for sake of transmitting timelines, I'll have it set up to immediately DocuSign kick it. And then with like a follow-up, like with the communication, and or texting. We text a lot these days. Just have a way to capture that and put it in your agent notes. If you're doing texting, lender and buyer are going to be communicating. I'm super involved with the lender from day one.
Yeah.
I had one lender recently that was like, buyer, this transaction actually, buyer's original lender, he was relocated from Washington. He closed with this lender up there. They were licensed in Oregon. I'm going to use them here. Lender was rude to me and was like, why am I bothering her? And why am I asking her these questions? Well, aren't you communicating with the buyer? I said, no, I'm communicating with you.
Yeah, I'm communicating with both. Yeah.
I'm communicating with you directly. I need to know, because buyers don't, how often do they do this? They don't know the lingo. They don't know what's going on. Ended up, guess what? After we get under contract, we're in the middle. All of a sudden, we'll see. We ended up with a closing extension because she's like, we can't do this one.
Yeah.
I was able to kick it to one of the local folks that I use. Guess what? We got a close. partway through, and she's like, "Oh, hey, are you going to send me a termination for this transaction?" Number one, you already denied it. You don't need. Number two, no, we're closing.
Yeah.
So neither, neither. So direct communication with your lender. And if that lender's having problems communicating with you, that's not a good sign.
Yeah,
It's a red flag right there.
Exactly,
And or scammers, and people do not use online. Yeah, sure. Let me just find some website and give you my date of birth, my bank account, my social, my mother's maiden last name.
yeah.
That's not at all potential for identity theft. Communicating lists. Do you have systems built up with communicating timelines, time frames? Knowledge is power. How are we communicating with our clients? What the time frame is? What's your next step? What needs to be happened? I've had people, the minute we get under contract, and then they're worried about appraisal over here. What if it doesn't appraise right? What if it, all the what ifs. When they start going what ifs, they're acting emotionally back and off. Well, what if on the appraisal? I said, whoa. We're here. We're inspection. If we don't get through inspections, if we can't come to an agreement here, we're not going here. So we don't need to be worried about here. We need to focus, and it helps redirect. So I provide a timeline of here's the timelines for the transaction so they can see it. I have a format that I use that gives them a visual. I have email templates. We're going to talk about that one. Templates. Building templates in your systems. Our KW emails are a Gmail. So if you know how to build templates in Gmail, I highly recommend. I send out the same email over and over and over again. I just build a template. So when I'm ready, okay, congrats, we're under contract details and dates. I have it set. And then I'm transcribing this, boom, send that. And then immediately followed with template email number 2. Next step is your earnest money deposit. Here's who it needs to go to, and here's what you need to do. And then, oh, boom, here, I'm going to share this timeline calendar to you. And it's a calendar with the full process so they can see it. But you got to keep them focused right here, because when they're looking at this, they get overwhelmed. It gets to be too much. Sometimes, again, keep things small too. Too many options can be overwhelming. Too many things to try to worry about can be overwhelming. So it's our job to know and understand that, but keep our party focused on their piece of the puzzle. And they don't need to know all these other details that we're working around the back side to take care of for them. Oh, we didn't talk about insurance agent. That would be on the buyer side. I have had that come up before where buyers didn't think about, oh, I'm going to need homeowners insurance. And so we're waiting on getting loan docs because they can't issue the loan docs because we don't have an insurance binder because they forgot to find an insurance agent and get that process started. And insurance has a process that they have to go through. So it's not going to happen with one phone call. They're going to send somebody out. They're going to have pictures. It's going to take a minute. What else do we have on our list? Scheduling, communicating, sending amendments. So it's addendums. Things change. We need to do an extension. We're negotiating back and forth. Say we get down to the appraisal and it comes in under our sales price. That opens the door to have that communication of like, okay, number one, buyer, we have a couple options. Either you bring that difference to the table cash, or we can put together an addendum to ask the seller to reduce the sales price to match the appraisal amount. Again, seller doesn't have to agree to it. Or, we negotiate somewhere, meet in the middle. That's what happened on my transaction. My appraisal came in 20 grand low. They came down 20, or they came down 10. I came up with 10. We met in the middle, made it happen. Additional questions. When are we reminding our buyers not to make the big purchases? Don't go buy the car. Don't finance the new appliances because you're going to get the email offers and the cards from open your Home Depot card and get your appliances. Are we communicating any holidays that might delay? Well, we should be planning that when we're counting our days. And then again, like I have one right now where it's a government thing. And so their standard contract is like closing is 30 days after acceptance. That happens to be a Saturday. There's no closing on Saturday. It's a Monday through Friday kind of thing. So that defaults to them your closing date are on or before. So that means, and if you're doing addendums to extend, always write that. Don't put, oh, well, we picked closing was supposed to be 7/19. Well, again, we had the hiccup, lender declined in the middle. We had to switch lenders and start over. So we ended up extending to 7/28. We had to extend to the 28th to get that closed. So do we put, okay, closing date to be 7/28? That means if they get the loan documents there early, whatever,
On or before.
you put on or before. So, hey, we needed to extend it to give time, but hey, we got documents there the 26th. Cool, let's close then. If you put closing date to be the 28th, that is a finite date. That means, oh, hey, lender sent the docs to escrow on the 26th, but we're sitting here twiddling our thumbs because we're not closing until the 28th. So terminology, you set, but when you're writing your contracts or your addendums, look at how it's worded. Is it on or before? What are your deadlines? What are your dates? In negotiating the inspection report, we're communicating, lots of communication on that. Another thing, we do those communications, we write addenda. We had a buyer's agent, newer agent, first deal, got the inspection report, and started having all kinds of text messages, conversations, communications with the listing agent about all of the things that the buyer wanted done. Never put together a buyer repair addendum. Oops. There was nothing for the seller to respond to.
Yeah.
You can talk to your blue in the face. No, have a conversation with your party, put it in an addendum, pick it over so that they can respond. Maybe they're cool with doing all of that, but you've never given them something to respond.
Mm-hmm.
And also it gives the deadlines for when that's going to be done.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that because it's literally happened. Then we had to end up doing an extension of the inspection period to give time for that buyer to actually put together a written addendum that the seller then responded to agreeing, but they'd never given them anything to agree to. So how often we're communicating, how we're having that. And again, I think having those conversations is setting that precedence with your clients. Oops.
It's not in writing, it's never been done.
Right. Is it communication or a document that we're talking about? Sometimes it's both. Appraiser, we're going to be communicating. That's going to be on both sides because the seller, would set the appointment. So the appraiser is going to be reaching out to the listing agent to set the appointment with the seller side, and then they'll notify us of when it is. We don't go there. You're not part of it. As the buyer's agent, I don't want a copy of the appraisal. I don't want to see it. That's them. If it comes in high and they make that equity, cool. The only time I want to know is if there's a problem or if there needs to be some repair, like price reduction, or if there's a lender required repair negotiation. Otherwise, I don't want it. It doesn't matter to me. And then when they are asking me, well, how much did it appraise for? I don't know. It's not my deal. That's between the appraiser and the lender. Best pathway. Oh yeah, how are we communicating? I have a Slick program that I subscribe to that I build the timeline on. It interacts, it's called Folio. It interacts with the Gmail. It puts a little sidebar that shows me my calendars, my timeline, all my parties are in it. And then it PDF prints all of my emails for the transactions. My agent notes, and boom, I'm done and can get paid. We want to get paid at the end. That is the biggest holdup in our agents here at this office getting paid. They might have all the documents and everything turned in. We don't have agent notes. Without agent notes, we're not releasing checks because that is what gets us off the hook when we have our investigations 9 times out of 10. Because that has who communicated what to who and when. And then follow up. So we've sent buyer repair addendum, but we need to follow up, reset an addendum. We need to follow up and get signatures back. So having a system that you put in place for yourself to track it. So blah, 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 blah. We already talked. We combined that into one. All right. We put our seller stuff, communicating deadlines, scheduling, document. Again, we did both at the same time. So in our opportunities and commands, we have ways to build checklists for our transactions that have the reminders for us. There's a way to set it up where if we have documents and stuff, it will send it to them. So there's a way to build it where command works for you automatically, doing those. Ahas. Anything that you think of that has been kind of new that you might have learned? I know you're experienced, so.
Okay. No, it's just for here, it's gonna, like I said, it'll take doing a couple to get into the swing of it.
Mhm.
Once then,
Is Arizona an escrow state or an attorney state?
no, as an escrow.
An escrow state.
Yeah. The difference is, company I worked for there,
Mhm.
they did not require any agent notes in your transaction or to get paid, so that's gonna be something too I'm gonna have to get used to.
As far as I know, we're the only brokerage that requires it, even among other Keller Williams offices.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
there's the reason why, and we had the conversations when I was the reviewing broker and part of that mastermind group. The other officers were like, "No, that's not a bad idea." It is not required by the state for our audit files to pass, which by the state, by the way, the state has logins into Command. They're popping in and reviewing our files electronically at all times. So we never know what, and it's not like it used to be where somebody in a suit showed up at your door and they started pulling files.
Yeah.
Escrow goes through audits too. And again, they're electronic anymore. We used to literally have students show up and start grabbing files off desks in the back. So that's the other reason why it's important that we stay current. Sign, submit, sign, submit, sign, submit. We've had agents completely do their whole transaction and never open up the opportunity, never submit documents to Command to be reviewed. State law requires that we have to review them.
Yeah.
So the rule is within 3 days of signature, the agent has to have them submitted to the reviewing broker, and then we have to have them reviewed and kicked back to be in compliance. If we're not, like, we can get all kinds of, the cascade of repercussions from the state for not being in compliance, up to and including pulling our license, in which nobody gets to work if we get our license. Right?
Exactly. It isn't all of the best interest to document
Right.
as soon as possible.
We've had agents that went through their entire transaction, never even opened the opportunity, never even submitted document one, and then were called and were upset that they didn't get their check.
Yeah.
And want to know why they couldn't have the check.
I always call the day before closing and say, by the way, am I getting paid more?
Right?
Yeah.
So, and I think, I mean, and I've worked at different places and been at this a bit, and I think our office does a really great job of staying on top of it and tracking and trying to make sure that we're getting agents paid as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
But also the agent needs to, like, it's a two-way street, right? Like, we all work together as a team and we want to give you your check. And sometimes we physically don't even have the checks yet. It closes in Eugene on a Friday afternoon. Well, they put the UPS out, but it's after pickup. So it's sitting, your check's sitting in the UPS box until Monday. And then UPS gets it, brings it here, and it gets dropped off on Tuesday. But you're calling me Friday and like you're mad that you can't get your check because you have plans for the weekend. And it's, and we don't get it till Tuesday, and then you call back, you're super mad on Monday because we physically do not have your check even to give you. Yes, your file is approved, and sometimes you'll see that in Command because it'll show the folders as approved. But so I won't mark the closed folder as approved if we don't have the checks, and we keep a check log. We have a system for that between the DFIs and Laura and Sarah and the reviewing brokers. We have a system to track it, and like if the checks aren't physically here yet, then we won't mark it as closed because until we give you your check, it's not closed, right?
Exactly.
But if we have the check and can give it to you, we'll mark it and know, like, hey, cool, I can grab my check now, or it's in my mailbox.
Kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning about how you have to getting into this business, understand and have your expectations set, because it's like that's the problem when you're like need that check because then suddenly you're all hyper. But if you're like planned for, like you said, if I've already paid for the vacation, I don't have to worry if the check gets there. But if I need the check to go on vacation, life changes really
Right.
fast.
right? Like I'll be honest, I really needed that paycheck on the 19th. But it wasn't happening, so it moved to the 29th, right? Like, and that's, I think there's one of the questions on the slide is when is it in your client's best interest to maybe not close on the deal? One of those things like Billy was repairs, maybe they send and there's like a whole myriad of, got foundation issues and a roof repair and windows are broke. So you gotta, we want a $30,000 price reduction and $60,000 worth of repairs done before we'll close. Well, maybe that's not in your seller's best interest to say that, versus like, I'll find some cash buyer that just wants a fixer.
Exactly.
I'm selling a 1910 house. Gonna have some issues. It's not gonna be a new house.
Nope.
Even new houses get inspections because they're stuck. I have a nightmare on that. Brand new construction, had a home inspection, didn't have a sewer scope. This is a brand new house. Plumbing hasn't even been used. Should be fine, right? 2 months later, I got the phone call from my buyer. Yeah, we probably should have done a sewer scope, and this is where I will always advocate for it. 2 months later is when all of the sewer backed up into the house. New builder covered it under builder warranty. Little hiccup, somewhere along the way, somebody forgot to actually connect the pipe to the city sewer.
Oh, yes.
So that pipe, it took 2 months for it to backfill up the road to the house and then overflow all over and in order to get to it, they had to jackhammer up the driveway. People were living with a porta potty in the driveway. That's what they had to get. Like it was, and this was brand new built, good builder. But again, subs. I mean, how does the builder go?
Sometimes
Subs forgot to connect the pipe. They ran it down the street, got all the way to the street, just never actually connected into the city. So
back to the check, you just start throwing dirt.
Yep. So even new construction, get a home inspection or a waiver, because then it's on them. I had a waiver. I felt bad, but they absolutely waived it. Said no. So yeah, we're catching up on slides. We already talked a lot about the risk avoidance.
Okay. I apologize.
No. I know we've delved in. I had reviewed through all of those slides again last night, so I kind of skipped ahead and just our conversations without keeping it up on the slides. Setting expectations up front. Again, maintaining the professionalism. People are going to lose their minds. It's going to happen. Our job is to keep our heads. Like I said, I feel really bad. I was that person last week. I just was done and frustrated, and I was not as professional as I should have been.
Sometimes you gotta shoot off.
Yeah, I shouldn't have shot it off at the lender. I'm waiting for the. I'm like, I don't give a shit. Fine, there's it. Just go. Give me loan docs. Yeah, was not the best. Not my best form. And I was not fully caffeinated. Not an excuse either, but that didn't help. My daughter said, "Mom, you need coffee. Let's go." Where's our risk? I would say the two biggest risk factors on any transaction that we may have some kind of control over: inspections, appraisal. Those are your two high risk. Those are the two big hurdles you got to get through to get to the finish line. That we might have some control over how we handle negotiation and stuff. The appraisal part, how would we have any control over that?
Well, depends who you ask, but if you, on the seller side, it doesn't hurt to go up and have a conversation with the appraiser, but I don't know what they're like here in Arizona. They won't even talk.
Yeah, they don't.
They're like,
they don't want to.
They don't want to. Yeah.
I was sometimes people need to shut up.
Yeah.
Sometimes you shoot yourself in the foot.
Right. Can you dig deeper into that? What do you mean by that?
As far as shut up.
Yeah. Place what can and can't be said.
Buyers and sellers, especially because they don't. Sometimes, I would say sometimes there's a little bit of, you keep things glossy, shiny, somewhat of a don't ask, don't tell. They don't want to know that oh yeah, well, the septic was failing. Oh, you just cleared them off. So what are they going to flag for?
Mhm.
They're not, the appraiser is not privy to what's in the inspections. So they have to make their own assessment. How are they flush the toilet and it goes. How are they going to know about the septic to flag for it? Or they're not out there lifting the lid and inspecting the septic system or whatever. So, maybe you guys have, worked through whatever here. We know, but then, then the sellers are in their mouth telling the appraiser, like, let the appraiser do their job. But what I say we as agents have some control over is on the seller side, pricing the home right.
Yeah.
Running our CMAs, running the comps, knowing that we have comps that we could, if we meet so representing the seller, I like to meet the appraiser out there to let them in. Here you go. And oh, well, here's some comps. Who can have conversations with the appraiser?
And the agent,
Agents, party. The only person who can't is the lender.
Yeah.
So we absolutely can have those conversations. We can. He said, will they talk to us? That's another story. But I think
They will take what you have.
but especially being like, because the lender's going to put in the request for the appraisal and they're going to get the listing agent's number to schedule it. So when I'm representing the seller, I'm like, hi, Mr. Appraiser, great to hear from you. Yes, let's schedule that for what works for you. Perfect. We're confirmed. I'll meet you there to let you in. And then I'm there with the big shiny flash. Come on in. And oh, well, here's the comps that I was looking at for that, having comps, doing our homework, doing our CMA, having our comps, knowing our numbers. So once in a while, if it comes back and it is a low appraisal, you might be able to have some pushback when it's the appraisals, they have this thing called Tidewater, where they're like, the appraisal's coming in lower than the sales price. You get 2 business days to plead your case as to how and why they should raise it. Here's my comps for that. Here's what supports this other sales price, and here's why. And it's a federal thing, so there's a whole form for that. But pricing it right, you can ask the sun and moon and the stars. And the buyer can be like, yeah, sure. But if we don't have data to support that the appraiser can use, it's not going to appraise for that. And then on the seller side, what should we always be looking at when we're taking our listings? Smoke detectors, right? We gotta make sure we got smoke detectors. What else? Straps, double strap hot water heater. I'm going through and taking my listing appointment. And I'm like, and let's go ahead and we're listing it. Let's make sure, because that's going to come up. Why do I want the appraiser to have to come back a second time and pay, $150 for double strapping the hot water heater? And that when we know it's going to be an issue. Anyway. So I'm having, as the listing agent, I'm having that conversation with my seller. We need to price right. We need to make sure not only are the smoke and CO2 detectors updated, they have to have it written on there when they were updated. It has to be on the device. Even if it's a brand new package sitting there, even if they watch you installed it, if you have not written installation date, they cannot accept that as new. So making sure they have access to crawl space, attic space. So that's what we can do on the seller side. And then on the buyer side, again, making sure that we are, making an offer that we know can be supported with the appraisal, or if it's not, here's our appraisal gap, we know we can cover it because, we're in the multi-bid, we know we're going to need to be at this price, but we don't have data that supports it, appraise for that. So if not, what are we going to do about that? And if the seller won't negotiate, do we have a plan? So those are your 2 big. Usually once you get through the appraisal, boom, like 10 days later, you can have loan docs on the escrow's desk. So those are your big hiccups. But again, multiple times having that conversation with your buyer, do not go finance anything at all. No new credit cards. Your lender should be having that conversation, but you're having that conversation too a million times. I had a buyer call me, hey, I need to go get groceries. Probably thinking about spending like $200 on that. Is that okay? And I was so happy. I'm like, they've got the memo.
Yeah,
I'm like, yes, thank you. Do you understand like how important? Because here's the biggest example. When I was in escrow, we had transact. We signed on Friday. Buyer came in. Couple escrow horror stories on closing. Buyer came in Friday afternoon to sign their loan papers with me. So seller was already in, had signed. Buyer came in Friday at 2:00, signed their loan papers, 2 to 3, left, went back. But the deal wasn't closing until Monday. Monday was the closing day when the deed transfer was happening. So we got all signed on Friday. UPS, this was before we could scan documents back to the lenders. Now we can do that. We had physically UPS documents back to the lender to review. So we signed Friday, but it wasn't happening until Monday. I called lender in the morning and I said, cool, are we ready to close? Are we ready to balance and close this file today? And they said, no and no. I said, what? And they said, because between signing and before they will hit send on the wire, they are re-verifying employment and they are double checking credit one last time. And she had gone back and quit her job Friday afternoon, 4:00, and financed $10,000 worth of furniture for the house over the weekend. I kid you not. Worst phone call of my entire career. 85-year-old couple, grandma and grandpa, been there forever, selling their house. I was supposed to call them when they were ready to pick up their check. So their voice was all excited when they got that, when they picked up the phone. Woohoo! And I said, I didn't know what to say or how to respond. So the only thing I could do, it's not good.
Yeah.
I said, I'm sorry to say that your transaction is failed. It's dead. It's terminated. Yeah. And they, wait, what do you mean? What does that mean? I'm like your buyer can't close this now. It's a dead deal. You got to put it back on the market and start over. Like, worst phone call ever.
Oh, it wasn't even your fault.
It wasn't even my fault. And I had to relate, and it was a Bisbee deal too. So it wasn't even like I could just give the information to the agent and let them deal with it. Yeah. Like I had to call the people myself. Horrible. The other time was when the guy showed up, driving his brand new pickup truck with the sticker in the window, pulling his brand new boat into the parking lot to come sign their closing papers to celebrate that they were buying their house. And the lender was there, and we saw them pull in with a sticker, and they walked in. And the lender stands up and he goes, no, you take it back right now. We didn't even let him get sit down. And he made them drive the truck and boat back to the dealership, cancel the deal. Like, no. And to get it to go through. Because otherwise it was like, can you live in that boat? Because if you go with that, that's what you get and you're not getting the house. So, yeah. So until escrow calls and says it's a done deal, deed is recorded, that means the money's transferred, the deed is recorded, it's done. Then wait until the next day. Then they can't take it back. But don't even do it same day, because then you can still go back and retro call the note and reverse the deal back out if it's happened the same day.
You get your keys and you move that first piece of furniture to the house. Don't even think about doing it.
Deed is recorded and money is transferred. Don't do it.
Yeah.
So best practice is keep the deal alive. Don't do anything stupid.
Yeah. Competition, but I have one.
Yes. I love the horror stories because it reinforces why did you think.
We were in
I think it should be a whole segment. Was always the biggest deal in escrow.
We were in the inspection period.
Okay.
Guy pulls up. He comes up to me and he goes, guess what I did yesterday? And that's always the best way to start these conversations.
That's always a panic attack.
Yeah. I'm like, okay. He's like, I quit my job and started my own business.
No.
I'm like, okay, we can go home now.
Yeah, we're done. We should terminate now.
I said, what's your lender saying? No, I haven't told him yet.
Maybe don't.
I'm like, you might want to make a phone call.
Yeah, because you know that verification of employment, VOE, verification of employment form, your lender's going to send. And that was my other horror story. It was a refinance. So I don't know if that makes it any better, but a gentleman was refinancing. When you do a refinance, you sign the papers, and then there's a 3-day waiting period before they finalize it. So if you sign on Monday, you're waiting Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We can fund and close the deal on Friday. finish the refinance. Gentleman signed Monday, wait. Friday, I called the lender. Let's balance, let's make this happen. And they said, yeah, no, we won't be able to close. And that is how the gentleman found out he was getting his pink slip
No.
Friday afternoon. Is his lender actually told him, because they sent the verification of employment, which states on there, and it states, just so you know, I don't know if you've ever seen them, that they're expecting employment to be for at least the next 3 years. You have to have expectation of continued employment for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
So the lender couldn't sign that, knowing that they were handing him his pink slip at 4. So he got found out at 2
Yeah,
from the lender.
I got bad news for you.
So the lender is the one that actually told him he was getting canned. Accident like that. But it was like, we can't do your loan because you're not employed after today. So you couldn't make the payments. Now he still has first loan, so he's still at his house. So maybe that was good. It's not on the screen, but we're talking about be the fiduciary. It's our job to help guide through the process and be the professional that kind of directs them through. We're holding hands, leading them through the pathway. And just like you talk about integrity, that's the I in our WI4. I can never say they changed it to WI4C2TES. All of that. The I is integrity. So like we were talking about, like what level of integrity, back to your whole like inspections. Good friend of mine, to the point this actually became, I guess we weren't friends for 2 years after this. Good friend of mine bought a house because they were going to fix it up and flip it. They were going to do the whole live there 2 years, fix it up while they, and then sell it and move on, right? Like, and I get that. I'm into that. Cool. They bought it with the inspections, knowing that we had a bid from Ranjab for $59,000 or $69,000 worth of foundation repair that needed to happen because the foundation was just, it was a hot mess. And I had gone over there for dinner with them because it was a personal good friend of mine. A number of times where they had the walls open, and that's where, you know, the full dry rotted walls, and then, oh cool, we took out the bathtub and we're going to put in a walk-in shower, and the whole wall is completely rotted out. And I was like, oh wow, look at, you know, you're going to have some work there. Nah, we're going to put drywall over it. They'll never see it. They'll never know. And then who did they want to list the property?
Yeah.
And I said, no, I won't list it. I said, and you don't want me to list it because I have material knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Personal material knowledge about, because I had sold them the house, you know, so I knew I had copies of that bid for 60 grand. And I knew they didn't ever do anything to fix it. Yeah, we put some level wood to kind of hide that. And we'll patch over it, it's fine. We'll place a few pieces of furniture so you can't see the issue. When they're showing it, they'll never know.
Very.
It was, and I was not going to be a part of that. And they were pissed. And I'm like, and then they FSBO sold it, and the new buyers were like, oh, it's been tolerated. And the appraiser doesn't know, right? Like, who knows? It's brand new drywall over top of rot, like completely rotted out, like structural load bearing wall. And we just randomly cut, make bigger holes and bigger things, like shear wall, structural integrity on a completed rotted wall. It should be fine, no problem, right? And this is why RIP is a 4-letter word. And it makes it really hard to get your CCB insurance when you do it right, because of all the people that don't. So anyway, I declined. I would not list it for him. And I got called dirty names, and they decided not to be friends with me for 2 years, but she randomly started texting me 2 months ago again. So I guess we're friends again. But I was like, I can't, I won't. I am not, I am not willing to put my name on the line. And for what? What's the commission on that going to be? By the time it's all said and done, you know, the great part was their daughter hired 2 months later to list her, and I got her more for her smaller house. She netted more for the smaller, not even fixed up as nice house, using me, and that was after paying my commissions than they did for the larger house. They just, so I,
and that story's not over yet, because at any time.
Correct. When and if they have a failure and they can document because it's out there because, oh, that inspection and that bid was on the WVMLS prior to us buying it. So the seller, when they bought it, the seller knew because the seller had ran Jack through the bids and the seller had the inspections and they were available online. So it was documented. It's available. Like it's been a couple years now. Wait 2 more years. There's something magic about the 5-year mark. There's a magic 5-year mark when it goes sideways on transactions.
Something's gonna crack.
It's 5 years after. If you think you have problems in the middle of a transaction, you know, and that's, I mean, and we saw it in escrow too. We always call it the 5-year mark.
What things could happen in 5 years to really come back?
Oh, well, they find out about that, so they sue the seller for all those repairs that should have been disclosed, that they were known material defects that were not disclosed to the buyer. Guarantee you that they didn't do seller's property disclosures like state required. So that's another thing, like material misrepresentation. There's all kinds of things they can go after that seller for.
Not do, I mean, did you avoid
As
it?
the agent, yeah, because I didn't list it, and then they just,
That's
you
what I'm
know,
saying.
Bispo
Her friends can be happy about the money they made for right now.
for the moment.
It could be a problem.
This is a lawsuit coming.
Yeah, and things are only going to
Yeah.
get more expensive to mitigate those damages. Yeah, there's stuff, and that is why our offices here, Mid-Willamette, like I said, this is the only office that I know that requires agent notes. And the reason why is, and we're dealing with it on the reviewing broker side of things. And this is the part we don't talk about, and I kind of think we should actually, like, obviously not disclosing detail, but like having this conversation about here's horror stories, and here's why, and here's what can happen, and here's why we want these protocols and procedure in place. So we're dealing with lawsuits for transactions that closed 5 years ago. Some of those agents aren't even at the firm anymore. Some agents aren't like, and how are we supposed to remember off of the top of our head who said what to who and when 5 years ago?
Yeah.
You know, versus if we have those agent notes, which is a PDF, a singular PDF of all of your emails for the transaction. So you want to, if you don't already have something in place, think of plan ahead, have something in place to be able to capture all emails relative to that transaction and that client, have all emails for that, so that you can do a PDF print and put it in the agent notes section in the close folder in command so that we can approve it and get you your check. And your text messages. Some people do screenshots, better than nothing. Ideally, you have an app that will do a PDF of your text messages with the clients. It was a one-time like $59 subscription to a program called AnyTrans that lets me hook my phone and do a PDF. And then the great part with that one that I like, because I have actually had to use it in court, it has a header and it records the IP address of the devices so that it can prove, because, you know, the nefarious people have falsified text messaging. They, you know, because you can save anybody as a contact, so it doesn't have their phone number and it doesn't have their IP. It has, oh, I saved this as client B and I'm agent A, and then you can falsify and make it look like there's texting conversations. So versus this app that I use actually puts the IP address of the device, that, you know, puts the IP address and the phone number, and so it has a header of that detailed information, and then boom, here's the
Which app is that, Mia?
the text message chain. I got this iPhone in 2014. Never ever sucks when I go to transfer my phones, but back it up to the iCloud and I have all records. So if everything ever comes back, and it has, I have record of it. I didn't know I was going to get sued 4 years later, but I never deleted anything. And I have the record, and boom, it was in there and it would help. So, you know, we don't ever enter into it thinking that we're, you know, but we need to plan our processes and systems to should cover the bases, you know, and documenting. And plus, you know, our client decides, oh yeah, I'm thinking about selling now. And, you know, I know we had that inspection report, but I don't remember who was that, or, oh, I need to get a hold of my lender. I can't remember what. Yeah, we have the records, and that's what our command file is our documentation, our file, and that's what holds up, and that's what we have to maintain and be able to produce for any kind of state audits or any kind of, you know, attorney subpoena court required documentation. So something to plan about and think about. Gmail, I haven't found a way, because we use Gmail at the KW, it's a Gmail account. I haven't found a way to run a PDF of those emails within Gmail itself.
Yeah.
There makes a thing where it looks like, oh, I created a folder and I go, it's like, oh, PDF. It does PDF attachments, but it doesn't do a PDF chain of the emails that you can look at. It does attachments. Well, you can't upload all this stuff. Like, we need one thing that we can literally scroll through and read from start to finish how the transaction evolved with your client, from ideally from your first contact with the client. So, you know, if I'm working with a buyer, I'm setting up a buyer folder in my Gmail, and I'm tagging all of my emails with that client into the folder, and then we're looking at this house and this house and this house. I have record of all the houses I've showed them, because, like, here's this one, this one, this one, and then boom, we get under contract, and then here's all of the evolution of that transaction. So I have all of it. Same thing, working seller. Hey, I'm interested in listing my house with you. Cool. What's your plan? All of that back and forth from initial inception. Having that record can save you. The way the law is written is that whoever makes the complaint, because we're the professionals, whoever makes the complaint, it's almost the opposite. It's almost guilty until proven innocent. We have to disprove their claim. Yeah. If we cannot disprove it, they are assumed, whatever their statement that they've made, it is assumed to be a fact. So I never got, this is when we were getting sued because they wanted the agent to replace the roof and all this other stuff. Well, I never got a copy of the inspection report. So back to inspections. I send all documentation, everything that I send a client, I send it through DocuSign or whatever signing program I'm using. Here's the copy of the inspection report. Please initial to confirm receipt. Mm-hmm. I had record. We turned that into the state. Complaint dismissed without prejudice. You did get a copy of it. You signed for it. Yeah. You can't claim now that you didn't know, and now you want to go after the agent $18,000 for the roof replacement. And they do it. And it's all well and good, and they'll be your best friend until it goes sideways.
So you're really excited about this?
Yeah. You kind of talked me out of this.
Well, I like to do the horror stories just for the fact that it gets people thinking, so you can design your process in your systems. Because then how easy is it? Oh, cool, I got your, and you awesome, I got your inspection report. I'm gonna shoot it over to you, and you will document, oh, here, please initially confirm receipt. It kicks back. That's what I put in my command. Here's the initial copy. They can't say they didn't get it. Everything that I've sent them, any piece of paper, any attachment, anything that we send them, boom, have it in your command folder. Because if it was important enough for us to be involved with that piece of paper, it should be in the file. And yes, we sent it in the email, but pull it out and put that PDF in your command file. It needs to be in there to cover your hiney. So we spent a lot of time on that. Yeah. We only have 10 minutes to skim through the rest, but really that's the majority of it there. Now, say we get, okay, boom, got through, we signed, we closed, you put your agent notes in, we give you your check. Now what? We want to think about future continued business, because we don't want this to be one isolated transaction. We want to use this as a way to continue not only the relationship with our client, but we've done such a stellar job, and we navigated through, and we avoided all the hiccups because we thought about it, we planned ahead, we circumvented those issues. So now we're going to be asking for referrals, repeat business. So we're going to maintain that relationship so that they will want to, on average, we're changing houses every 8 years. So 8 years down the road, because we're going to be in business that long, who are they going to call? Because we maintain contact. It's not a one and done. We're going to maintain contact with them. And they had such a great experience. They're going to refer all their friends, families, coworkers, person from church, stranger that mentions, hey, I'm thinking about buying a house. And they overhear, oh, you know who you should talk to about that, because they did such a phenomenal job. So we want repeat business, referral business, and client reviews. And if you don't have a process set up to capture that, because ideally your transaction went well, and they're going to write a glowing review for you. So you want to think about having some kind of a review capture process in there. Sometimes things don't go well, but I found that clients, they will appreciate how you handle those hiccups or those roadblocks when they come along. Maybe things get really screwed up sideways, but the way you handled it and helped navigate them through that, they really appreciated that. And so that actually can end up with a good review too, even though things got really wonky. So when do we want to ask for referrals?
Sounds like throughout the process.
All the time. Yeah. Be like, hey, you know, that's how I build my business. I want to grow organically. The biggest compliment that I can receive is your referral. Throughout the transaction, and again at the close of the transaction. Again, we're talking about templated emails. Template, congratulations, we're closed, blah, blah, blah. And here's a link to my review. I'd love it, appreciate it. You feel that I've done a good job for you, would appreciate you filling out a review for me. And then follow up, conversations with. So the post-closing follow-up, that's what we were talking about. I don't know why this is not showing it anymore. So within Command, I don't know if y'all are using those systems that we have built in there. This is like the one get it set up. So we have our smart plans in Command that are pre-templated emails and follow-up contacts that once you close a deal, you can apply a smart plan to that client as a closed. Now you've tagged them instead of them being a buyer that's, in nurture and moved to active. And then now they're a post-closing. So we follow up, we put in their closing anniversary, which sends us the reminder to, oh, hey, call them or send them an email or send them a handwritten card on their, home anniversary. So there's plans right in Command that we can utilize for that. You set them up on the bi-weekly neighborhood nurture, the 8x8 contact engagement, quarterly call plan. So you apply those plans. It's a way that it helps automate and helps send you the reminders, especially when you start building out your database and you've got transaction under your belt. Who can be expected? We wouldn't try to keep all this just in our head. We're building timelines, we're using systems. We want to do the same thing for our follow-up. So we stay consistently top of mind for that client. We can also use this as a way to build our downline. So because we have profit share at Keller Williams. So if you had a great transaction, you worked really well with that agent, you like them to be like, hey, have you considered coming on board to Keller Williams? I can have, you refer, Laura to follow up with that agent, and then cool, then there's a referral, and then any business they do here, then boom, that adds to your profit share. So it's not just limited to your clients, but it can be all parties. I've even left, when I was the listing agent, I've left closing gift basket, welcome to the neighborhood gift basket for the buyers on the table or the counter. That went over well, especially when my listing agent didn't give it. This buyer had bought and sold 3 properties in Washington. Not once ever got a closing gift. I did. He was a pizza and beer kind of guy. Case of beer, Domino's gift card. Thank you for closing this deal. Super down to earth guy. He was almost in tears. He was like, oh, this is my 4th house and nobody's ever, not even given him a thank you card. Not even giving him a thank you card. It was a friend of my cousin and they both got relocated down here. So he was like, so I felt confident in pizza and beer. I was like, I know you guys are doing a moving party. So I'm just looking through the slides to see if there's anything here that we haven't covered yet. They want me to double check with you, and I agree. Anything from today's flash that might have changed your way about thinking about how to work through a transaction or how to document things or how to, or any ahas?
No, it's just a good reminder because, and like I said, knowing now that you guys require, it makes it, I gotta make sure I have the system in place for that right away.
For that, because it comes up quite often, especially with first transactions until you figure out a system. It is my understanding. So I use a regular PC. I have an iPhone, but I'm not a Mac user. It is my understanding with Macs that within that system, there's a way to PDF print. So people that have Macs do that. I also understand that people that use Outlook, there's a way to have it do a singular PDF of that. I've seen some agents physically print every single email and scan it in to put that in, because that's what they've worked with. I pay, like I said, and I receive no endorsement, blah, blah, blah. This is just personally what I found that I use that works for me. I would love it if they came up with something through command that worked with it. Haven't seen that yet. I use a program called Folio that it's a Gmail extension thing. So whenever I open up my email, it opens up a little bar on the side of it that has my timeline. It builds my timelines. It builds like a little personalized customized web page for the clients. When I share it to them, it looks all fancy, like they have their own web page. The thing I like about it, and I pay $29 a month, and it's worth every penny because it's scanning all the emails, it's picking up the property address and putting it in a folder, so it's automatically capturing. If somebody hasn't referenced it, I can tag it and put it in the folder, captures all those emails, and then when I get ready to close, when it's done, there's a little dot. I click that and say, download PDF email. And it runs a program, and then within 20 minutes to 24 hours, I've never actually take 24 hours, it sends me an email like, here's your PDF, and I throw that in and I'm done. Mm-hmm. There's other programs that it gives you like a free trial or like one free up to like so many megabyte, whatever. But then after that, they want you to pay per download. Yeah. But hey, I mean, if somebody's only doing one or two and only needs that and wants to pay it per download versus a $29 a month or whatever systems you're using, the important thing is just finding a system, knowing that you're going to need that. So finding, planning for that, having a way to get it, I think is important.
Well, then I like the idea you have of DocuSign everything to them. So you have
Yes.
the initial part.
And your
Yes.
acknowledgement.
Yep.
Because that's huge. Because yeah,
It is.
it's the first line of defense. I never got that.
And that's all. I mean, I see that time and again.
Yeah, well, it's the first thing they say is, no, you never told me. Because obviously they're not going to take them and say,
Yeah.
they can help it.
Yeah. So, not when especially if there's commas involved.
Yeah.
All of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it kind of goes to the default, like, oh, well, agents have E&O insurance.
Exactly.
And if they talk to an attorney, the attorneys are absolutely, that's in escrow. We would get
hanging fruit.
We would get, every time there was any kind of dispute, they always automatically just threw escrow on there.
Yeah.
Whatever transaction. So we were always getting like a lot. And then we were, and then foul ourselves out if it really didn't pertain, but they always put us on.
Yeah.
Just blanket.
The person you swore would never be the one to sue you.
Yeah. Like my very best friend.
Yeah, exactly.
That,
oh no, we'll be flying on this.
That they called me their granddaughter, and I lived at their house, and I tried, like I was the child they never had. But then, we're not speaking because I wouldn't want their house because I was like, you don't want me to, because then I would have to. I would love to, but you don't want me to.
Exactly. You don't want me on that witness stand.
You don't, because I'm not gonna lie for you, and I'm not gonna lose my license for you. I have to feed my family.
That's what I always tell people.
And next year too.
And next year, and year after that, and 5 years from now too.
That's right.
Yeah. So
Well, thank you.
that's all we have. Again, I try to make myself available for any questions, help.
Sounds like you're gonna be busier busier here soon.
Yeah, hopefully.
August is almost over.
Yeah, I have third rip off. I gotta go finish some demo the next 2 weeks.
Are you gonna be busier trying to cover for Angela and
Yeah, and lessen until we find a full-time, replacement that we can all be like thumbs up.
Yeah.
Which I'm super sad. I absolutely adore Angela. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
she's phenomenal. And I get it, at some point people retire.
Yeah.
My parents are doing that these days, and
you'll
they're
be
like,
working close to mom?
they're busier now than ever now that they're retiring. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. They're like, yeah, we gotta come camp at the KOA because we're here and here and here and here. But instead of driving back and forth from the coast, we're just camping for the week because we're all over the valley. Over here.
All right.
So yeah.
And yeah,
Well, anytime. And text me. I pretty much live with this on me. Text, call if I'm not busy. I will absolutely answer. Again, I don't, especially if it's agents, I try not to limit my, I've answered calls at 10:30 at night because I know we're working whenever. So
I'll go to fine.
if I'm available,
That's for sure.
I have,
Yeah.
I turn off my computer, my business computer, at 8 o'clock at night. So
Yeah.
That's just
Like-
the way it is for me.
I don't.
I think that is so important too for.
I used to not, I learned a long time ago
Yeah.
that you don't, they will take every available.
I've burned it well now. I need to get better at it, but
Yeah.
My marriage.
It'll happen.
I did that.
Well, and after like business hours too, it's really hard because escrow's not available, lenders not being able to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Is limited, during like last.
I think it was from 8:20 to 9:20, 9:30 somewhere.
Yeah,
I'm like, hey, I'm gonna finish the rest of my work. I'm gonna hang out with family, watch TV, hang out. When you guys go to bed, then I'm heading back to the office to finish work. Where it's like, instead of doing it and then everybody goes to bed at the same time, it's like sacrifice that hour, delay your work.
yeah, that's what I do a lot. Like I've worked when I was doing, I had 90 transactions in my TC pipeline that I was actively managing. That I'm not talking about like here. And then like literally we had 20 of them closing like same day. Like I had 20 of them. So it was a hot mess to have all of the files prepped because my goal as TC, my personal goal that I set for myself is I want my file approved and closed out before the checks ever get here.
Yeah.
So that when the checks come in the door, it's like throw it in the box for them, right? So I am like super conscientious, and I'm back telling them I'm picking my closing date, and I'm backing it up. And like 2 weeks before the closing, I'm like checking with everybody. Are we going to be ready to close? What do you need, lender? Do you have what you need from the party? They're like, no, we're waiting on you. I need to know what those are so I can follow up with that party. Like I'll be that person as well to follow up and be like, hey, your lender needs this. Have you gotten it? Because they get confused. They don't understand. There's so much coming at them that sometimes they just freeze. They go into like, I don't know what to do, so they do nothing. Versus like, okay, great. Like I can help facilitate. And then I'm getting, make sure we have commission demand, make sure we have addendums, make sure we have final contingency release to escrow because we want a final contingency release in our file. So I send it to escrow. I have a template for that. So I have a template, like the 2-week follow-up before, like before we close. And then I'm like, all right, closing. And then I'm like, okay. And then I have that morning, I have open up, here's all the things closing today. And then boom, I'm sending out my closing today, ? Property address. And it's template email. Do we look like we're closing on time today? Do we look like we're, I have a printout. I'll screenshot and have a printout of like, here's what's missing off my checklist. I need to be sure that we get that back in. And then following up and then having systems in place, knowing what my agents are working with. Like if they have the folio, cool, I can log in and run it and run their agent. And so I don't, boom, I can grab it. They don't have to do nothing.
Yeah.
I grab mine. I get, so having that all in place to make it happen. Yeah, good times.
Good times.
Good times.
Heck yes. Well, good to see everybody.
Yes.
See you Friday for Ignite number 20.
Oh, that's right.
That's the last one.
One more.
We need to have like a little party,
We'll be rolling gold.
right? And gold, I don't remember how many times I've taken it now, but each time, like, I get something new out of it.
Right.
Yeah. And it's cool. One of the things they have you do is they have you write a letter to yourself as where you're going to be in a year. And then they hold it and then they mail it to you. And it's cool when you see, when you put something, it's something magical about when you put it in writing, it kind of puts it out there in the world. And then to see when those things happen and when they come true. And I wrote down some personal stuff. And then it was kind of scary because when I got that letter and I'd forgotten about it a year later, and I was engaged. And at the time, he and I were only dating and hadn't even gone there. Like, it was kind of cool. So it's fun. So they help you work it on not only your business, like talk about personal, like your big why.
Yeah.
You got to focus on that to keep driving when you're dealing with the hiccups and the
Exactly.
garbage. So,
For those days you're looking, going, why did I hurt you?
right.
Why did I choose this road?
In the muck and the mire. Yeah,
All right.
exactly.
We'll talk to you guys later.
Have a good day.
Do.
That's all right.
No, she's done.
I don't know what happened to this.
No, I think Corinne probably did that. Let me
But
get my-
it's still on here,
let me
but
get my
it,
computer.
so I'm not sure I'd show around. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I missed 2020,
You missed 2020,
the real estate market of 2020.
right?
It was so much easier. It was so much
I like-
easier.
Yeah.
Every deal's hard. I had a manufactured home in a park misappraisal today.
What?
How many times the manufactured home park misappraisal?
Oh, man.
Today would be that day. Wow. That's a bummer.
I'm still here, just so you
Oh,
know.
you're still here. I'm not gonna change then. Hold on, I'm-
Otherwise,
you
I'm
hear
gonna have to
me?
reconnect.
Wait, I gotta plug the thing back in. I unplugged it. Well, we're doing our.
Winter Wednesday. Yay.
You didn't turn it off. I appreciate that, Corinne. Okay. Kate, can you hear us?
I hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Let me exit this.